I think there's, you're
from a miner's perspective.
To call it like fudding Bitcoin and say, I'm selling my Bitcoin or I'm no longer interested in this network because fees haven't materialized yet. And this is going to be a problem 20 years from now, I think is asinine. But I think it is not asinine for a miner or a Bitcoiner in general who believes that mining needs to be healthy in order for Bitcoin to be healthy, for them to be actively contemplating, working on funding, researching ways that L1 fees can rise while Bitcoin scalability improves. That's why something like drivechains is interesting to almost every miner you tell it to, who doesn't necessarily understand the technical details of it. But what they do understand is that a drive chain theoretically pushes revenue from a layer 2 scaling solution directly back to the miners. And that is like the high level drive chains pitch.
I would push back a little bit. I actually think that miners get cut out of the equation with drive chains a lot faster than they think, because it's a two-way peg. So Bitcoin goes in and you buy, the drive chain Zcash or whatever, and then there's a 6-month period to depeg, right? To go back to Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And the reason there's a 6-month period is because, the way the depegging process works, you basically have a pretty clear shot if you were to do it in a couple of blocks for a miner to just steal those rewards.
Steal the funds, right.
Whatever. But I think what you see develop really quickly is a third peg, which is just OTC desks that say, you
Absolutely.
know what, leave it there and I'm going to pay you out.
Right.
And the miners get cut out of that situation aggressively. And I think that happens pretty much overnight.
Assumptions there, right? You have to make an assumption about where the sidechain peg trades relative to the layer 1 Bitcoin. We don't know that. And I'm not necessarily married to the technical construct of the drive chain, which is the 6-month pegging back and forth and bridging. I guess you call it bridging if you're a shitcoiner.
Pegging.
Pegging.
A lot of pegging going on in drive chain land.
You prefer pegging?
Excellent joke. Thomas prefers pegging.
Yeah.
Almost all the time.
Against bridging? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had you as liking pegging.
As you were saying?
You really teed that one up. No, so the general view, I hold this without having a super strong technical opinion of the way that BIP 300 and 301 are the proposed implementation. I like the idea that there's an opportunity for layer 2 scaling to continue to incentivize deploying more hash rate onto the network. Right now, if Lightning adoption picks up, it's going to reach a point where there's saturation, and then the fees should bleed over into the layer 1. But if you see Lightning adoption ticking up, that's not really as much of a direct incentive to install hash rate and go and build out mining, because there's no guarantee that those fees will pass through.
It feels like we're so early, though, to care.
Absolutely.
Because most of us are just holding our Bitcoin and not really spending it right now.
Right.
Because there's a massive incentive to. And so we're not really using it as a currency.
I think that's absolutely a valid response. And I didn't used to feel this way quite so passionately until I had a shitload of hash rate out in the middle of the West Texas desert. And now I do. And now I have a really strong opinion about it. I want to pump my bags. And I also think it's absolutely true that fees need to go up in order for Bitcoin to work a century from now. Fees need to be material in order for Bitcoin to work.
It's not our problem. It's a century from now.
Right. But we should be trying to design the best system that we can. And I think these choices do matter.
I agree with that. I think most people would agree with that premise. It's how do we get there? 300, 301 to me is just a myriad of systemic problems, and pushing it through in the way that Layer 2 Labs wants to, because of whatever representation they made to their investors on how they're going to return capital, is I don't think necessarily the right approach that we should drive into.
What are these BIPs? Explain to people.
So,
you got this one.
I'm out of my technical depth. So we had Paul Stork and it was myself and Arbed Out, and this is where I just sort of checked out and handed it over to Arbed Out because he's a very skilled and talented protocol level engineer. So I'm not the right person to ask. I know that both of them are basically required for the pegging, depegging.
Yeah, one is
for drivetrains.
it allows the block to count to a higher number, so it basically creates slots for side chains, merge mine side chains, where effectively a miner can use their valid proof of work on the layer one to either verify directly, or other users can verify through the miner transactions on a side chain. So it allows you to kind of double use proof of work through a specific process that is a Bitcoin side chain. So there's currently side chains on Bitcoin. Right now, there's currently merge mining on Bitcoin, and there's merge mining on a bunch of chains like Dogecoin and Litecoin are merge mined, where if you're mining one, you're mining both, and the proof of work is valid on both chains. This implementation basically, in layperson's terms, it formalizes that with a BIP and lays out certain sort of preliminary proposals for how that would work. I think it's 256 side chains are available to be used. And then there's this pegging and depegging mechanism, bridging, debridging, where through an implicit trust in a miner-based multi-signature scheme, Bitcoin can flow off of the layer one and then be used in these side chains. And in order to bridge back to the Bitcoin layer one from this side chain, there's quite a bit of trust that goes into the miners, with the idea being that you're trusting the miners because they're earning revenue from these side chains. And so it's not in the miner's best interest to steal from you, but technically they can do it. And so the criticism of it is definitely warranted. And some more thought going into it is warranted. And there's a huge Twitter kerfuffle going on.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Me as a Bitcoin user, just somebody who stores Bitcoin, sometimes receives it and sometimes sends it. What do these upgrades give me?
Zcash.
But I don't want Zcash.
Then
It's already failed, Zcash.
Yeah, I think the answer is it would potentially offer a different method of scaling that isn't Lightning, and this is my perspective as a miner, this could result in a world where the scaling that occurs on Bitcoin ends up paying more fees to the miners on layer one, so it makes Bitcoin more resilient to an attack.
So it's kind of like a hybrid of base chain and Lightning.
I think sidechain is a good definition for it. I don't know.
What do you think, Marty?
I think, like, what are the lower hanging fruits that we can go after first? Like, number one, price appreciating certainly helps miner revenues denominated in dollars. The price is appreciating. That means adoption's going up, which likely means there's more activity on the base chain, which means fees are going up within each block. Other things like hedging products, like how can miners hedge risk and lock in revenues without taking on too much hash rate risk in the future? What are some other revenue lines that miners could take that are external to
power trading?
Yeah, the Bitcoin blockchain that can help their businesses survive.